Ooh, ladies, I have a juicy podcast for you. And it's not just for the ladies this time. I mean, guys can get in on the secrets too. So, we have a really special guest, Hayden Merryn, and she is a business owner, influencer, risk taker, and dismantler of societal norms. Ooh, so we actually met on Clubhouse, and I'm so excited to have you. She really pushes issues that a lot of people don't want to talk about. And she just shows up, speaks her mind, and she's sexy as fuck. So if you guys, you're listening to the podcast, you may want to go check us out on Instagram or on YouTube. So you can check this sexy goddess out. So go ahead and introduce yourself and kind of share what you do.
Well, thank you first for having me. I am so happy we were able to connect. That's the thing that's so exciting about social media is you get to meet all of these other people who just make sense. They vibe with you. They get where you're coming from, and then you can collaborate and turn it into something really great. So yes, I am Hayden Van Holzen, or Hayden Merryn as my influencer name goes. And I am a business owner. I own two different agencies focusing on modern marketing tactics, public relations. We do brand development, all kinds of fun things. You're welcome to check me out. I have HVH Media and Marketing and 21 North. I'll make sure you guys have access to all those different things. And I can't be great in my industry by not being influential myself, which is something that I really wanted to harness. And by going on that exploration is really where I ended up here now, because putting a lot of yourself out there and testing authenticity, vulnerability is talking about the things that everyone wants to talk about, but they're too afraid to because it's just taboo or uncomfortable or not talked about in society. And the world really makes it so that women feel like they can't be sexy and they can't be sexual and they can't explore and they can't be these things outside of being a business owner. And that's just not true. And we're living proof of it now today. And I'm excited because we're really going to push some limits and kind of talk about some fun things that I think a lot of people want to talk about and just too afraid to.
So true. So, how did you get into being a multiple business owner?
Well, it was a long road. A lot of times coming off of failures too. I have kind of a crazy story. I mean, like the quick version is I was really interested in marketing because I was good at it. I've always had a creative mind. I've always been able to hop on any platform. Like we're talking like Zynga, MySpace, like that long ago, and dominate it. And I just got really fascinated with social media and how you could make money on it. And so I majored in it, focused on marketing, communications, public relations, and came out of school and was just like, how can we do this in the most unusual way possible with a limited budget? Because when I was starting off, I didn't have the big dollars to spend. And the way that I learned to do that was you had to do the things that other people were afraid to do.
Mm-hmm.
And those risks, they made you money. And so I worked in a bunch of different industries and had access to all kinds of different things. And I realized that just kind of along this path of like my personal life and my business and trying to find this way, I wasn't really living my true self. I was in the wrong marriage. I had the wrong friends. I was a very shell of my actual self that I've become now.
Yeah.
And I had a lot of growth that had to happen. And to some extent, the universe kind of thrust it upon me. So got a divorce, my very comfortable job, my boss and assistant died in a plane crash. I was forced to completely change who I was.
Shit.
And then my family cut me off and all of this stuff happened. And I was sitting here in this complete pit of despair, trying to decide who I was going to be. And it was like now or never to go, okay, well, who was I before the world told me who I was supposed to be? And this all was like this reinvention time for me. And I started to explore myself. And a lot of that was even my sexuality, like healing past trauma and all that foundational stuff. And then trying to decide like who I actually was before everyone told me what it was supposed to be like.
Yeah.
And so I definitely explored. And I found out so much stuff about myself. Like this is when I found out that I'm absolutely a bisexual woman and that a lot of the things that I thought and told myself to be attracted to, they didn't really attract me.
Yeah.
And a lot of my issues that I had with sex and stuff with my previous partner were because I wasn't actually being open about who I wanted and the things that I found hot, and the things that turned me on, I had never really been into like masturbation and self-pleasure. And now I'm an expert. I'm sitting here with like all this stuff, accidentally turning things
Yes.
on. But like, I just feel like it's, and of course I touched once, now it's on. You can see this. It's another story. There we go. But I just feel like there's so much that we just feel uncomfortable talking about. And I just really stripped myself and put myself out there. And I talked about my failures and my woes. And I let people take this journey with me. And I realized that people really gravitated towards it because they needed it. They needed to know that other people were failing too, flailing, and trying to figure it out. So,
oh my God. Oh, this is so amazing. How long ago did that kind of like happen when you were just like, I'm done with this. I need to start exploring myself. I need to start changing. This isn't me.
I would say it was almost 5 years ago now.
Okay.
And
Awesome.
so, and you know, it's funny, I've done podcasts even just focusing on just my divorce. And I always tell people, I'm like, it takes time. Like before I really felt comfortable saying like, okay, I'm getting this now. Like I actually do know who I am and I can tell people what I want. It took a long time. And there was a lot of times where I was trying something and I was like, oh, I don't like this. And that's okay too. You know, you explore something, you try something, you give it a chance. And you're like, oh, this actually isn't for me. Or wow, like I spent all of these years not realizing this is something that was a part of me. And I really resent, you have to go through this healing of resenting people for making you feel like, oh my gosh, like this is a part of who I am. Like I need this. And I didn't accept this about myself for so long because people made me ashamed to accept this. And this is why I've been so unhappy, or something, it's been manifesting in another way. And you're not reaching your full potential because you're not exploring these pieces of yourself.
Oh my God.
So crazy.
It's so true. So we're very similar. I mean, so I grew up in Utah, so it's a little bit different in that aspect. And I just felt wrong for being sexy or, you know, I mean, I always liked sex. But I remember there was a point that I kind of shamed one of my best friends, like in my mind, that she was like sleeping around. And I think that was the very point that I started challenging myself around these like shame and beliefs, and I started doing that inner healing and inner shadow work, and that's when my journey started. I think it was maybe like 8 years ago, but it's been like a lot of changes throughout the time. And then I would say about 3-ish years ago, once I lived in California and I was already exploring my taboos and sex parties and my sexuality and being more open. But once I started doing that, I really decided like I'm working on all this shame. That's kind of what it was. It was
Yeah.
like all these boxes that I tried to be in. I was like, fuck these boxes. And like just started like working on that judgment and shame that was like piled on my back. So
Yeah.
what kind of like kept you, or what was the beliefs that you had to be?
Man, I feel this. I feel this so deeply in my soul. So I totally understand this. So my mother, who I have no relationship with now, or any of her family, she is one of the most prudish, judgmental, elitist people that I've ever met. And just being raised by that was so horrifying. Like I always talk about even just like body hair and body grooming. Like my mom had caught me when I was going through like a developmental time, and she saw that I had shaved and like shamed me and like made me feel like my body wasn't my own. And I remember her like having my stepfather tell me all the reasons like he loved her body hair and all this stuff, and just like how traumatizing it was. So much of like my upbringing was like what my mom told me, like women never call men first, and women they save it till marriage, and you know, women who like sex or are sexual are the devil. And oh my gosh, like I can't even begin to tell you all of the stuff that like I really had to work through as far as her. And you know what, and now I look back on it and I always think like this poor woman has no idea who she is. She has not embraced any pieces of herself. Like I actually feel sorry for her now, but I'm sure she sees my stuff to this day and like probably is like
Dying.
oh my God, that's her belly button. It's showing. Like, just like, you know what I mean? Like, she just can't handle it. And I'm the happiest I've ever been. And so a lot of that all was from that formation as like a child, young age. Like, I really struggled with it. And then, of course, I hit that streak of like, this is not who I am. And like, started to explore a little bit, got immediately into a relationship because still so much of that was a part of me that like, by the time I was 18, I was almost married. Like, really, I met my partner. He was 10 years my senior. I was just too afraid to, I was too afraid to explore that.
Mhm.
And it just was so challenging because when you have these pieces, you're constantly working against that. And then when you get into a relationship, now you have that projection from them.
Mhm.
And then I have this partner who's telling me that how I like sex or how I want to explore sex is wrong or weird, and like how he knows sex is the way to do it. And it's all of this toxicity.
Yeah.
And I look at all of this stuff and I'm like, man, it's like the toxicity from my childhood then brought me into a relationship that was then toxic for me as well. And then the relationship that I was in, which was a reflection of a lot of those things that I hadn't worked through as a child, then it kept feeding more
Yep.
into this. And I got so boxed into this tiny place that eventually I went, ah, and I had to break
Yeah.
out of it. And weird things start to, you start to be exposed to these different things in your life that you wouldn't expect would expose you to what you actually like. Like, I remember even
Yeah.
just like watching 50 Shades of Grey and being like,
Oh, yeah.
I like this. Like,
Oh, I
this turns me on.
loved that. I
And
loved
everyone else
it.
was like, oh my God, this is terrible. This is abusive. And I was like, she's willingly submitting. Like, she wants this. Like, I want this. And like, just these little things that
Oh,
awakened
yeah.
in me that I was like, I'm missing something. Like, I am
Yeah.
missing something.
Oh my God. So I'm very exploratory. And even while in Utah, like I went to a very small town school in Utah, but I guess I didn't really, I mean, all my girlfriends would talk to me about sex. And it's funny, I was a virgin through high school actually, but I loved those books. I'm trying to, when did they come out? Because I swear,
Oh, I'm trying to. It was a while ago, but I know because before that there were other ones that I was into, like that erotica, because like that was like as far as I could push the limits. Like I even remember just like starting to explore porn for the first time ever, and was like, I'd be like googling it like somewhere that I'm not supposed to be. Like I just felt so ashamed of it. Now I'm like every day I watch porn if I want
yeah,
to. You know what I mean? It's like I do whatever I feel is comfortable for me. But you're so
yeah.
right. Those books had to be. I think almost
2015. Oh
okay.
wait,
I was gonna
2000,
say
yeah. So I was
it was
like
the first one.
25.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So I started exploring those and reading those, and I was just like, oh my God. And I got like the Benoit ball or like the balls. I started doing that. I got like the handcuffs. I started like exploring all these things. I got like a little like BDSM kit. And it's
Mhm.
funny because I started exploring, let's see, 25. That was like only a year before I moved to California ish, a year or two. And like, me and my I think I had a boyfriend at the time. We started exploring and it was fun and he didn't shame me and he like got into it.
Right? That's the best. And I feel like that was the first thing that I looked for when I got out of my divorce. Is I just wanted
Ooh.
a partner who wanted to make me feel okay for what I
Yeah.
wanted. And that
Yeah.
was the first thing I searched for. And
Yeah.
I also looked for completely different qualities. Like after you come
Mhm.
out of that toxicity and you have someone who's willing to like explore with you and like make you feel comfortable. And I did explore my fetishes and my desires to some extent. Like I wasn't necessarily picking partners because I was like hoping to get married again. I was picking partners that were going to help awaken pieces of me that I had dimmed for so long.
Yeah.
And so, and you're right, like there is this like taboo, like even right now, like if I were to talk about this, I had friends who were like, well, if you don't see a future with him, like, why are you with him? And I was like, because he fulfills desires for me. And we are very open and communicative about the fact that this is what it is. He was, so this man was 20 years my senior. He was almost 20 years my senior. Beautiful man. And just very loving and nurturing, but it was very much what I needed at the time. We didn't see a future together. I had no intention of being with him, but we very much explored these things and he made me feel
Yeah.
safe to explore them. And I just remember being like, this is what I've been missing for all of these years.
Yes. Oh my God. My last relationship did not shame me. So right before,
So
I
nice.
remember a guy like seeing my toy drawer and like he was like not my usual type now, but he was like super white, like I mean, he was business, he was from San Diego, and he saw my toy drawer, and I could feel like he felt like insecure because I had like these toys and these experiences. And once we tried something different with him, I swear he like felt like I was like a slut because I'm just gonna say it, because we did anal. Like,
Oh
I
yeah.
could tell, like, and we were dating, we were traveling to, like, we were in Cabo. Like, we were dating, and, like, I could feel he started thinking of me differently because I had a toy drawer and because I did anal with him.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna be very honest then. Me and my partner did anal just a couple days ago. We had some
Yeah.
tequila, had some anal sex. You know, I just it's something that like you explore it, and I actually explored it, and it's so funny. Like, I remember it being something that felt so weird for me and almost like wrong when I was with my ex-husband, but part of the reason it felt like that is because he made me feel so uncomfortable about exploring everything else. We probably would have gotten there comfortably
Yeah.
had it not been something where he had made me feel so ashamed of all these other things. And so because he had made me so ashamed of these things, it was like, well, this is shameful then too. And like now my sex life isn't governed by we should be doing this, it just happens, it flows. Like
Yeah.
if it goes there, it goes there. Like
Yeah.
great. And if it's something you want to explore and you like, by all means. And like so many women have a stigma about it where it's like dirty or slutty. And it's like, no, just enjoy yourself. It's the body. Enjoy your partner. Be with someone who makes you feel that way. Like my partner now is obviously my soulmate and the man I'm going to marry. And so it's a very different, like I can talk
Yeah.
about my other sexual partners in a way where they were a moment in time and they fulfilled a certain need, but like
Yeah.
this is the be all end all sex partner
Yeah.
for me. Like this man can do no wrong. He is such a beautiful human.
Love
But
it.
that
I
kind of
love
sex,
seeing it.
that out of body, like just like I would literally do that. Man could put it in my ear if I had enough muscles for it. Like he literally could put it anywhere. But that's how it's supposed to be. And part of that is because I know I can do no wrong with
Yep.
him. I could ask him anything.
Yep.
I'd be like, can you hang from the fan like Spider-Man? And he'd be like, I'll look for harnesses, sweetheart. Like, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
he wants me to have those experiences and it should feel like that. Whereas
Yeah.
coming from my ex-husband who like everything was you like this weird and the other girls this way. I'm like, oh, I'd love to hear about all the other people you've been with right now and please make
Right.
me feel small. Like it's just so bizarre. But I've had a lot
Yeah.
of great sex. Like I really have. Like I've had some partners that, you know, like I said, they fulfill different needs. Like, you know, I have this one guy that was younger that I totally ruined him for other people because no, we had a really fun relationship. It was cool. We had a lot of fun. We knew what it was and it was very exploratory. Like
Yeah.
I opened his world to things that I had started to play around with,
Ooh.
whether it was role play or like he had never used toys before or just a lot of that fun stuff. Like having that exploration is so important. So
Oh, it is. So ladies, okay? Ladies and gentlemen even. Like
yes.
I'm trying to open up more to both. So you got to go find somebody that's open to exploring. That does not shame you. My last relationship changed my whole life. Like I helped him explore, he helped me explore. We tried new things we both hadn't tried. He got a little uncomfortable about things and so like boundaries are very important and we'd talk about them, but it's funny because he'd be like, "Oh, I'm not down with that." But then he'd be like, "It was okay." I was like, "Okay, that's fine." But then he'd kind of come around and then we'd try these new things and then he ended up liking them and then some things he didn't like. Like he wasn't really into BDSM at all, but he liked to try it a little bit. He's like, "Maybe I'll find someone to do it for you." But like he was like, I gave it a little bit of a try, but it's not my thing." So if you could just try and not shame people for their desires and even just share them, communicate them for
Yes.
fun with no expectation is so important.
I think that is something that I love that you brought up because for us, we're people who do just naturally communicate these things. We care about it. But
Yeah.
I have not realized until talking with so many women just through like my Instagram and some of my different forums where communication isn't a thing. Like they will go years and years and just not tell that. Like they'll be like, "Oh, I haven't had an orgasm in X amount of time," and I'm like, "Oh, well, did you talk about it?" And they're like, "Oh, I could never talk with my husband about our sex," and I'm like, that sounds problematic. Like, how are you guys going to fix it if and also does he even know? And like, obviously it sounds like he doesn't. I just feel like people are so afraid to have these conversations and you need to. And
Yeah.
it is something that I truly lead with in my relationships. When I approach this and anytime I've had any other relationships, I'm very honest upfront about what I'm looking for, what my expectations are, who I am. And then when we start to get into that sexual world, like, one, you need to be able to be talking about safety. Are you testing? And, you know, all of that stuff. Sexual health is very, very important, but even bigger than that, like, you know, what do you like? And are we compatible? And what are your boundaries? And are any of your boundaries things that are deal breakers for me? Like, for instance, if you're really into BDSM and that person can't perform it and they're not comfortable with you receiving it from somewhere else or a third party or having that kind of like that kind of swinger kind of ideal or polyamorous ideal, it's challenging because you're going to have to compromise it. And I feel like with the real right partner, there isn't a lot of compromise because you're aligned. That understanding is there, that exploration is there, and it's okay that maybe this partner isn't meant for you. And I think a lot of times people hold on to things and they try and make things work, and someone's unhappy, and then there's resentment, and I'm just like, no, let's not do that. Let's talk about this. Let's figure this out ahead of time.
Yeah, and it does. It just takes talking about it. So one of the ladies reached out to me, and it's funny because they don't want to fix these things. And she was like, "Oh yeah, we don't have sex anymore. We've pretty much become roommates. We used to have sex, but like he doesn't talk about it, so like it's probably not a big deal." And I'm on the other hand, and I'm like in my head, and he's like, "He's not talking about it doesn't mean he isn't struggling and in pain, and he's a guy. He wants sex."
And he might be having it. That's the other thing. And I hate to say this, and I don't even want to give them a free pass, but you know, I think of women a lot of times they go like, "Oh, my husband and I haven't had sex in 5 years." And I'm like, "Who's he having sex with then?" And they're like, "What?" And I'm like, "You might be okay with that, but what about him? And also, why don't you care about him?" And I'm not trying to be unfair on either end, and I'm not necessarily condoning cheating either, but this is two people, guys, and sometimes more. You guys have to think about this. Like, you know, your partner has needs, and you might have boundaries that don't fulfill those needs, but like, why aren't you caring about what your partner's needing while you are having those boundaries? Because everybody needs something, and it's not just you in the relationship. So if your partner's a sexual being and you have boundaries and you're not sexual, how are you guys going to work through that? What are you okay with? And a lot of times I have these women, they'll tell me like, "Oh, we're not having sex and I don't want to have sex with him, but he'll just have to figure that out." And I'm like, that's not a partner. That's super unfair. What about them?
Yeah, for real. And you just need to talk about it. I know you're so afraid, especially as time goes by, as time goes by. But then what are you going to do when he's so sick of it and the resentment builds. It literally like building,
bubbles over. I call it the resentment cup.
Yeah, it's gonna fucking blow, and it's gonna be worse than you ever thought possible. And like literally they could up and leave. They could just be like, "Peace out. I fucking hate you. I've been holding this in for 5 years. Peace out." Whereas if you have this communication, which sucks, which you're being vulnerable, which you're sharing desires, you're sharing things that are struggling, but then you can feel better and find a solution. Like, come on. Do you care? Do you not care if it's going to blow up at some point? Because I'm telling you now, it's going to. It's going to. Like, you got to figure it out.
You're so right. And I think it's hard too, because when people hear us talk like this, they haven't reached a point where they're starting to feel comfortable with what we're saying right now. They don't even want to hear it. They're like, "These women shouldn't be talking about sex, and this is not appropriate, and we're married. You should just keep going." And some of this tradition is so painful to people as individuals. It's like we completely negate that our partners are people and they have needs and they deserve to be happy. It's like we get so accustomed and comfortable in the tradition of things that we completely lose sight of why we're really in something.
Yeah.
And I value my partner so much. And, you know, I've even had partners who, and this is very taboo, and I think this is a good thing to bring up. I've been dealing with, you know, the world of bisexuality and how it's very okay, more so for women to be bisexual than men, but we have to assume for all of the women that come out as bisexual, there's probably about an equal amount of men who are bisexual. And I've absolutely had partners before who have never felt comfortable coming to terms or talking about that, but they absolutely had bisexual tendencies. And it's because women are not very good at handling, and I'm not going to say all women. A lot of the women that are in my life, and this is what I should say, a lot of the women in my life are not good at handling the idea that their partner might like someone else. And so when you add a whole other arena of people,
Yeah.
it's so intimidating for them. They're like, oh, I couldn't even fathom that my partner could be thinking about another woman, let alone another man, and then have to it's like,
Wow.
sex is so complicated for people, and it's such a personal and independent thing. And sex doesn't necessarily negate how someone will feel about you. And there's just so much that goes into it. And I just wish people would take a step back as a true partner and listen to what their person is saying to them and not make it so personal. Um, I think that this is something that I've been hearing a lot lately, just, talking to some of my friends and the people in my circles about their partners. And this is something that continues to come up as a topic. And I'm always like, well, I'm bisexual and my partner has to deal with what that means. And that I could be attracted to both men and women. And my partner is not bisexual, but had he been, I would need to be okay
Yeah.
and open to that as well. Why should he accept it of me if I couldn't accept it of him?
Yeah. The double standard. Same with
Yep.
threesomes. Like, men are like, oh yeah, like they kind of make bisexuality about them. It's
Yep.
not about you. It's actually about me. Like they kind of like still put it like, oh, like women on me and blah 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 blah. It's actually not about the man. It's about the connection, and it could be about all three, and like playing and connecting. And with the woman, you get this different dynamic. Like being
Totally.
with a woman is like this feminine, soft. It's so different. So yeah, I'm best bisexual, and my man, he was okay with that and he didn't feel intimidated, but he also didn't make it about him. He wasn't like, we did have threesomes and yes, I'd like bring women over, but he enjoyed me being with a woman. He liked it. But yeah, I would have to be okay with him being with man, but he was not bisexual at all. Not at all. Thankfully, but like honestly, I've tried to open my mind to be like, people are okay with me, I'd have to be okay with them, and like just be open and ready if that ever happens to like communicate and figure it out together, because it is different. That's the thing, ladies and gentlemen. It's just different and you're not used to it, so you just have to open your mind. That's it. That's just open it.
And you have to heal a lot of your own stuff too. Like,
Mhm.
I think a lot of times people they want to push it away. They don't want to hear about it. They're just, oh, I can't do it. And you're like, that's a you problem.
Yeah.
Like my partner and I, like my partner knows every single sexual partner I've had. I've been very honest and open.
What?
We talk all the time. I mean, this man is my best friend. So like when I say this man is my best friend, like I have openly told him about every partner. This man probably couldn't tell me about all of his partners, but we've talked about it enough in detail. And like, we just understand the experiences and how we feel about sex. And we've just been very open, and he knows who they are and he knows some of the really dirty details. And because when we were talking about my sexual history, the things I like, and even just trying to understand who I was as a person, he was able to detach from his own love and attachments to me to think about me as who I was prior to the relationship, because it's not an attack on him, because this was me prior. This is how I got up to this point. This is who I am now. And I don't think it intimidates him, because I think he knows his role. And it's my job as his partner to make him feel that way, make him understand that his role is completely separate and different. And the relationships or situations that I had with these other people, they played a part in forming me, but that doesn't necessarily mean they compete. And each thing is different. Like, people awaken different pieces of your sexuality. Like I referenced, like this younger person that I had been with, like I had a very different role. I was dominant. Typically, I'm more submissive, but I played a dominant role in that relationship. I decided how things were going to go. I controlled the situation. Like, he was there to participate in whatever my fantasies were. And
Yeah.
he's normally someone who's incredibly dominant, but because we had that
Yeah.
situation of like, I'm like 8 years his senior, and we were exploring my fantasies, and like that was what it was for. That's how it operated. And I feel like there's just so many ways to explore sex. You know what I mean?
Yes. My last one was he'd had threesomes before, but he'd never been in a relationship or like with somebody that he cared about doing threesomes. So that was different for him. Is like
That is
he
different.
like brought people in, and we were even at the beginning, like we weren't in a relationship, but like we were in a relationship, and he was
Yeah.
like, very different. This is new. I've never been with someone, and then like seeing them with other people. And like he was very like, he's a man. He's he understood that there is a double standard. And he would even tell me that. He's like, I get this is a double standard, but for this, it's just how it is, Tia. Like, but then he would try and challenge himself. That's the thing, is he would see it. He's like, yes, I get that this is this way and this makes me jealous and I do this, but I see it. I'm sorry. This is like sometimes it's different. It's not always equal. And
Yeah.
so I was like, okay. But yeah, he would be like, okay. One of the things was he was like, okay, like you sleeping with other women at the beginning of our relationship. He's like, I'm sleeping with other women at the very beginning. He's like, so you can too. And but we didn't talk about it at the very, very beginning. And then he was like, I just like he hated it. He hated it. And then it like changed. But it was
No,
just
I
funny.
understand that. I actually do. So the threesomes that I've had were in situations where I felt like, and this is for me, I feel like they were not committed relationships. Committed relationship threesomes is a
Ooh.
totally different dynamic.
Yeah.
And the third really has to be brought
Yep.
in a very true third role.
Yep.
These were ones that I had where like I was maybe hooking up with a woman and I had a male best friend, and then we kind of all worked together, which definitely happened, and that worked well because there was no animosity. It was very much like this is happening with her, and I was exploring, my bisexuality, and then I had a best guy friend who it was very comfortable and cool. There was no way that I'm still friends with him to this day. That went really well. I did have a partner where I was in a relationship with more sexual, casual fun, and brought in a friend at the time. And there were some boundaries that just naturally happened because I think she just was very good at knowing her
Yeah.
role. She was like, these are going to be the boundaries that I can probably do for comfort. And I think it was more about him at that time, maybe a little bit about me, but he kind of wasn't sure how far of that threshold he wanted to cross and then still be able to see this person and connect. And everybody's different.
Yeah.
And I've definitely talked about this topic before with my significant other because of the fact that we intend to be together. I brought up the fact of like, would we explore this? And I think for him, he's somebody he's like, I don't need it. And he's like, it's not a need
Yeah.
for me. If we
Yeah.
got there and I needed it, or it was something he wanted to, I wanted to explore because I have that need, he's like, I would be more than open to it.
Yeah.
But I think that for him, he's like, we have such great sex. I
Mhm.
mean, I'm just assuming that it will continue on as long as we continue with our communication, things like that. So it's not a need, but I've definitely had other partners where I've been in committed relationships with, where I felt it might have been a need had we stayed. And it
Yeah.
definitely has been something that has been brought up. And a lot of people are very afraid of it. And it is a conversation where I think some people, you're right, they make it about them. It's just too personal.
Yeah. So I will tell you one thing. So the last couple unicorning situations that I've been in were married.
Oh,
And
yeah.
they were two very different ones. One was like he just kind of had a free for all and the dynamic was a little bit different. And I actually talked to the woman and brought her in. Like it was actually okay for me to hook up with him. And I felt weird. And so like anyway, I'm not going to get into the details right now, but I like brought her into it and then I felt more comfortable and it was like more fun and like I'm friends with her now. And so I liked that. But then this other dynamic was the complete opposite. It was like super respect. There was boundaries. They asked permission. They talk about the boundaries before time. I'm the fun and they're the secure, amazing relationship. Like we were at a part and I was like, hey, can I sit on your lap? We're all about boundaries and sex parties and events. And he was like, let me go ask my wife. I was like, ooh, like I was turned on. Like I liked that. I loved the respect he had. I loved that he put her first always. And then I was just like the fun and she liked me too. And so that dynamic was just so safe and like I'm fun, I'm having good time. They both liked me. So it is good. And it brings because there's times that relation like in the past with my ex that our threesome like brought up a little bit jealousy, but the end result was actually this like open, like trusting, like
Yeah.
deeper connection. It was like amazing. There was an experience that like we felt this bond when we like kissed in the middle and we're both like fucking other people and like I talked about it later and he's like there was like this connection of like deep intimacy and trust and like there was a point that we just stopped doing all that stuff because we just trusted each other and didn't need other people. But it's just like all phases. I don't know.
No, you're totally right. And I think the phases are important to talk about. And, I think the phase
Yeah.
that I'm running into now for me is that because I have this partner that fulfills every possible need that I could have, especially from the masculine side of my desires, I
Uh-huh.
definitely have gotten to a place where I feel like more women are hitting on me regularly. And actually, it used to always be where I'd be with men and not all the needs were fulfilled enough. So I got hit on by a lot of men. But
Mm.
now I do not get hit on by men ever, and it is always women. And I think it's because that other piece of me must very much be present and visible now. So women who explore that very much feel it from me. Like I was actually telling my partner recently, I was like, honey, I feel like a lot lately, like I have been propositioned by a lot of women. And he's like, and it's funny because he's like, I know men look at you and are attracted to you. And like, that's something that they want. He's like, but you're right. Like your energy very much is giving off more. I want to explore my feminine side. And maybe that's
Yeah.
because of my comfort and happiness with him, but it is a phase. Like it
Yeah.
changes and it
Mhm.
evolves.
Yep, it changes. Oh my God, you got to look up Skirt Club. I will send it to you. It's a women's only, which makes it a little bit more safe. And it's bisexual, straight women or bicurious that go to an event. And I just got back last weekend. And there's like mini skirts that you just go and you connect and it's networking. There's some like little exploratory games like truth or dare, spin the bottle. It's very like light and like fun and playful. And then there's more of like the play party, which I did last weekend. And you kind of start as like an event. There's games, there's connection. And then by the end of the night, there's like women playing and tequila shots. And it's so fun, but it's out of the men's gaze. Like, this isn't about the men. This is about us exploring. This is about us being safe and boundaries. Anyways, I'll have to send it to you. It's so fun. And you don't have to do anything. It's just more like a show, it's like a party. And then it can develop. So it's so fun.
Yeah, that's so awesome. I feel like there's so many different things like that that are starting to pop up more now. And, you know, to anyone who is listening, I think the thing that stinks so much is I didn't really realize my bisexuality. And it's not so much realize, it's more that I actually accepted it until after my marriage. And so I was,
Mm,
nearly 28 years old. And that stinks. That's such a horrible feeling. And I just feel like if anyone's listening and you even have that thought or you're wondering, I just tell people, I'm like, even if you have that attraction to women, like that is a form of bisexuality. It's not so black and white. You don't have to go down the path completely. You don't have to have a sexual experience with a woman to
yeah.
be bisexual. You can just be attracted to women, and exploring that is okay. And I want you to feel safe to look into that. And, there's so many ways that you can realize it too. I mean, one of the first ways that I realized it was in porn. You know what I mean? I watched
Yeah.
a female situation. I had never experienced that. And I was like, I'm aroused by this. Like I am
Yeah.
really interested in this. And then
Yeah.
eventually I went on to really explore it, date women, have sex with women. And, I know you brought this up before, but like it is a totally different experience to be with a woman. And there's all different types of, female partners. I mean, it can be very masculine. There are plenty of women out there who are incredibly masculine and they
Mhm.
fulfill that, but in a completely different way. And the relationship you'll have with yourself and a woman and a man or someone who is, non-binary, like it's completely different. And I truly believe that even if it's not for you, at least be open to the idea of it and explore it before you write it off, because society just makes it so uncomfortable. And I'm so much happier just like accepting this about myself, that I could be somewhere and like find almost any person in this world attractive, because it is so much about the humanity of the person and how you connect. And sex shouldn't have boundaries and limits. It should be whatever it needs to be in that moment for you.
Ah, I love that. So, goodness, we have been talking for a while. We're just like boop, 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 boop,
I
boop.
know.
So well. Oh my God. Okay. So I'm curious. One of the things I was going to ask you earlier was, okay, so you have this business and you're super successful and you have like, you work with men and business owners, right?
Yep.
Okay. So, and then you're sexy on your Instagram account. So, I don't work with men. I don't usually. So, how do you hold that dynamic? Because I mean, people will be like, "Oh yeah, like can we have a coaching call?" And they're literally hitting on me. Like
Mhm.
how do you hold that dynamic where the men are respecting you and you're sexy and owning it on your profile?
I am a big believer that not all people are meant to be your clients. The
Yes.
right ones will always explore further. I'm sure you can tell, I kept this conversation super casual, like
Yeah.
bun up in my bed, wanted to do
Yeah.
this, but like I wear many hats and I am a chameleon and I show up in many different forms. And when it comes down to the actual brass tacks of things, is I know how to make people money. And when it comes to my male clients, they might originally look at me and see my physiognomy and not realize immediately what's behind it. But I really come in guns a-blazing. I am a tall woman. I am in heels all the time. So I am 6'3" and domineering. I know what the fuck I'm doing. And I can make people money and do a great job when it comes to business. And yes, my appearance tends to be somewhat dichotomous, but in the reality, I come to the table with this very different persona. And it's because I am multifaceted. All of us are, because of who I am in the bedroom and what I'm exploring with my partner, or who I am as a parent, or who I am as a friend, or who I am in business. They all are a part of me,
Mhm.
but one doesn't negate the other. And I think the people who work with me and do the best, they really, really wholeheartedly understand that about me. And they actually respect it. I think that they can see who I am in my personal life and realize that it doesn't interfere with who I am. It actually probably empowers it. And
Mhm.
when they start to realize that dynamic, I think they see a lot of power in that. They
Yeah.
realize that owning that is a challenging thing, and being able to do both and not hide and have both is an even bigger struggle. So I have to be that much greater in order to
Mhm.
do that in a society that really doesn't allow for it to some
Yeah.
extent.
Oh,
So that's usually how
100%.
I do it.
So I get this question all the time. And so yesterday on Clubhouse, I was literally talking about it is that you can own your sexy inside of you. And like you have this presence, it's inside of you, shoulders back, chin up. Like, yeah, you look fucking fierce and hot and you're wearing a pencil skirt, but it's on the still like business side, like you're not going to a club, and you can hold that sexy energy and power without
Oh, for sure.
kind of with the energetic boundary that they're not gonna fuck with you.
Yep. There is absolutely so much about body language, posture,
Yes.
positioning of your face, your eyes.
Yeah.
Like, even just me, when I come into my power or when I'm
Yeah.
talking in a certain way, you see how the dynamic changes. When I'm just sitting and talking to you, I'm like
Yeah.
this and I'm comfortable.
Yeah.
But when I come into myself
Like,
and I'm talking about my business, my posture changes. I have a different presence. How I talk changes. My even just everything about my body language and structure is completely altered. And you're right. I own my sexy in all different spaces. And it
yeah.
is very, very important to me. And it's part of who I am. And frankly, I think it's part of how I negotiate. It's hard for men to say no to me in a lot of those situations because I'm coming at it from so many different angles. And
Yeah.
if we're going to be objectified for it anyway, why not capitalize on it? And that's something I've always believed.
Oh, yes, I love that. Okay. Yes, ladies. You just have to hold it. And that's something that I go over in my course is like how to break out of that shame and all that judgment that's piled up, how to own what you have right now because it's the appearance, it's the inside, it's your energy on the inside and how to hold that boundary and then really how to open up into pleasure. And all these things are kind of like inner healing, becoming yourself, all this shit, which is kind of what we've been talking about for the last like almost hour.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. It's spot on.
So one last thing is how so self-pleasure is definitely another last like taboo topic that we wanted to cover. We're going to do an IGTV in just a second, but how like I know women struggle with this. They struggle either doing it for themselves or having toys or really letting go, or for me I've also experienced women relying too much on toys. I love toys. So there's so many different aspects. So what part would you like to dive into, I guess?
I think it's important that you brought up the relying too much on toys because I've definitely gotten there. And
Yeah.
it's important to not, you can't, they do have, so I'm a big Jimmy Jane fan. Jimmy Jane is a great place. go check them out. They've got all different types of toys. They just did a collaboration with Self magazine. Half of the toys that are sitting in front of me right now are from Jimmy Jane. There's everything. I mean, we're talking clitoral stuff. You know, this is specifically a suction that's for pussy eating. Like, you can simulate anything. I think for anyone who hasn't actually played with toys or hasn't explored their sexuality and doesn't understand their body, the biggest thing that you're going to run into is like, how can you expect someone else to please you if you don't even know how to please yourself? And also, you might not even realize there's so many things that you like, or there's just different stuff about your body. Like, explore it. It's yours. It's your temple. Like, you should know it. And you know, I definitely got carried away because like once you play around with like a vibrator, like you can definitely desensitize and to some extent if you're not using a good product. That's why I always say, you know, if it's something that's going down there, like invest in a product, invest in something that's right for you. Talk to someone who understands, talk to someone who knows, because they'll tell you how to use it, when to use it, what you should be doing, like what types of lubricants, how you should be using your lubricants. There's so many different ways. And there's a lot of different things to explore. I mean, you've got a lot of different orifices and different ways that you can sexualize. And there's different ways to masturbate than just with a toy. And that sexual exploration, you know, the visual masturbation, like trying to find out what turns you on, and like, you know, even just understanding your own sexuality and your own sexual energy, and like what makes you feel sexy and how you exude sex and sexuality. And there's just so much, the nonverbal side. It's a huge, huge world. And that exploration has been so, so important to me. And it's helped me really become who I am. It's helped me distress. It's helped me be creative. I mean, I use masturbation for all kinds of different things. And I think that would kind of be my all encompassing way of talking about why I think masturbation is so important. And you're right. People have a big fear, and some people just won't even explore it because they're so afraid.
Yeah. And some women are like, well, my man should know.
You're like,
What do you say to that? I mean, I have stuff I say, but I want to hear.
He doesn't have a vagina. Well, I mean, he only knows from exploring other people's, and theirs are not like yours. Yours is completely its own. What my vagina needs, like, I've always been very open about this, but I am not big into having my pussy eaten. I just don't enjoy it that much. The wet on wet has never been a big thing for me. I like a lot of stimulation. I'm definitely someone who is very clitoral, but I like more of that pressure. It's hard to accomplish with the tongue. I've had a couple of people, you know, explore it because it was more actually for them. There's some men who are really turned on by the process. I would allow for it, but like, it's just not something that I personally enjoy. I'd rather have different types of stimulation. And I feel like that's where it comes in. It's like this, people are like, oh, that he should know. I'm like, he learned by practicing on someone else's vagina. Was totally different than yours, girl. Like you gotta know, like give him some pointers.
And you gotta figure out like what kind of touch you like what kind of turn-ons turn you on, like even just like this, like, ooh, I like that. Like this, I like my nipples touch. Like this is what you gotta explore. You gotta like learn what your erotic blueprint is. If you guys are interested, DM me or check my other podcast. Like you gotta learn like what gets you going, because it's not going to be like the other woman he's been with, and he is not a mind reader, and you gotta learn it. And it is up to us
too. It changes. When I was younger, I was a totally different person than I am now. After you reach 30, your sexual energy completely changes. Holy crap, I am hornier than ever. And they always say that it happens. Oh my God. I am like, I swear I feel so bad for my partner. I mean, the man is sexual, but it is hard to keep up with me. I mean, it's why I'm sitting here with all of this. I'm like, oh, please. Yeah. But I'm telling you, I mean, it changes. What you like changes. You might find something that you're into for a little while, and then you're kind of get out of it. It's a phase. I mean, it's just like anything. I mean, I go through phases where like, I only want to watch girl on girl porn, like just all girl on girl porn. I will specifically use my Jimmy Jane, which is my pussy eating one that I love. I actually just coached someone through this the other day. I said, get a good lubricant that pairs with this. Jimmy Jane has their own lubricants, but warm it up a little bit. Stimulate. If you're someone like, so for me, I was someone who like, I just wasn't that into like the whole pussy eating thing. So I would stimulate it because I really wanted to know if it was more of a mental thing or if it was truly a sensation thing. And I think I can get into it in some capacity, but really I noticed that even how I play with my toy, it comes back to the fact that, I mean, this does vibrate, even though it does the simulation of like the pussy eating and it's local, hyper localized to that area. The thing that I actually still like about it is the vibrations. It's still a pressure thing for me. And so again, though, but still tried it out. Was this about me? Is it a mental thing? Like, you know, I definitely looked into it. So.
Ooh, yeah, I like that. So also, ladies, this is what I heard the other day. It was by Andre Knight, I think it is. You cannot give someone an orgasm, but you can facilitate it. So they help you get there, but it literally is up to you. It's up to your mind. It's up to your pleasure. It's about what you want. Like, yes, you can blame it on the guy not being good, but you don't know what you fucking want. So that's why you have to
Oh,
have self pleasure.
think about how cruel that is too, to like be like, listen, I'm going to give you one of the most complicated spots in my body, and I'm not going to give you any directions, and I'm just going to lay here and hope you figure it out. It's like, oh, come on now. Like, and listen, we have a much more complicated orifice than a man does. Man, like, you know, even men kind of, they sometimes jokingly, up the ones that I've spoken to, they're like, aside from when they're in that youthful phase, they're like, anything can turn me on. They're like, something brushes against it and it just happens. They're like, it's almost like it happens upon us. It's not until men kind of, as they start to get older, that sex starts to change for them too. I've talked to a lot of men who have hit that kind of 40-year mark, and they're like, my libido has changed. Like, I genuinely can get turned off by something if I'm not emotionally connected, or maybe their sexual desires have completely refocused. Like, things that they used to enjoy in their youth, they're not interested in it anymore, and it happens that way.
Yeah. Well, I'm 31. So I'm 31. But yes,
32.
yeah, one part of that, of us being so like turned on all the time, is because we're fucking awakened, because we're connected to our sexuality, because we don't feel shame, and we're open to all this pleasure. Like, there's so many times I've been doing podcasts and I'm like literally playing with my pussy, and I'm just like,
Yeah, you're like,
I'm
this is
so
a great
in love with
conversation.
my life. Like, I just love, like, I'm just so
Everyone's gonna
turned
be like, you're
on.
like, her arm was moving. I think I saw her arm moving. This is, oh, okay. She's a no, I totally agree. I understand that there's different things that can turn you on. Like, I'm always surprised sometimes, and I'm very honest about it, but like, I also have very bisexual friends. So like, and we all have to kind of decide where our boundaries are with some of that stuff, because friendship and love and all that stuff, sometimes it's hard to cross.
Yeah.
And I have my best friend in this world. She's literally my best friend. Very bisexual. I'm bisexual. We tried to date initially, decided we were just perfect as friends, agreed we wouldn't cross some of those boundaries because she's very, very jealous. Like, even to this day, we've never really had sex, like full blown sex. Like, we've definitely done some things, but we never went there because we knew that she would just get too jealous. It wouldn't work. We would have to have the relationship, and then it would lose the friendship. And so it's funny though, because being around her and stuff, like, we have moments where we're like, and she's like, yeah, I'm like, oh, we're totally turning each other on right now. Like, we need to refocus back to friendship mode. It's part of who you are, but it's because we both are very okay with our sexuality. She's very comfortable with herself. I'm comfortable with myself. And, you know, sometimes it's nice to just address the sexual tension. Like, oh yeah, we fighting, we fucking, what are we, friends? Gonna go watch a movie? What are we doing?
Yeah. Are you guys still okay with like kissing sometimes, or is that too?
We definitely had moments of that. I think now that we've gotten a little bit older, and now that I'm in a relationship that is monogamous, like, I mean, not that my partner and I haven't talked about that outside exploration, and you know, he's not opposed to it. I don't think he would be threatened by it. The thing that we really discussed though, and I think that we've kind of arrived at for right now in our relationship, is that if I wouldn't be okay with him doing it, because I just don't feel like it's necessary, or it invites something else. And I feel like the type of relationship we have is just so sacred. Like, everything's just so set. I feel so satisfied. I don't feel like there's anything missing how I did with other partners. And that's not to say when you feel like something's missing that something's wrong with the relationship. I just feel like he so wholeheartedly, like, mind, body, and soul, fulfills every possible need that I have, that it's just not even a need for me anymore. I can find a woman attractive and things like that, but like, I never even care to explore it, because I crave it so much from him, and nothing compares or competes at this point.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a lot of it. But I've had other partners where we absolutely did. Like, Whitney and I, all the time, she and I, we were all about it. But I think she too, now she's looking for that next phase of her life. And I think she feels like sometimes those feelings can conflict when we explore them. And that's just kind of where she's at.
Yeah. And then, like you said, like things can change, things can
Yep.
develop 10 years, 20 years. You can always readdress, ladies, gentlemen. You could always
Yep.
talk about things that maybe your partner wasn't okay with earlier. Literally, one of my clients was like, my partner is so against this. He doesn't want threesomes. And I was like, this was my homework to her. Share your fantasy with him, tell him what it would be like, and have zero expectation. Let's just pretend it's off the table. I want you to just share it and help him understand your why and like kind of make this like
Yes.
picture. Guess what? I said no expectation. Like, this isn't to get him to do something. This is to share and connect, to share your fantasies. And then guess what? He ended up being open, but that was not the goal. That was not the goal. It was just to talk and to explore desires together, because it brings you connection. And like you talking about yours, whether or not you do it, brings you closer.
Absolutely. And we obviously don't have the issue of talking about stuff. We always keep it very open. And we like to ask hard questions about other people. So like if something's going on in a friend's life or whatever, and it comes up, we always like to discuss like how we would have handled it. Like we've heard, a friend of ours
Ooh.
cheated on their partner or whatever. And I'm like, how would we have handled that? You know what I mean? And he's very much the kind of person where we talk about this stuff like, oh, well, if this were to arise, we would address this. And so we've had that conversation. I mean, he knows that I'm very, very much bisexual, that it is something that there is a chance that at some point I may want to explore, and he's open to it. He's always open to it. It is not a need right now, but for him, he just wants my satisfaction. Now, I definitely know that when it comes to other male partners, that is a boundary for him.
Yeah.
But also, again, healthy relationship, it's not a boundary in a sense that he wouldn't want that for me. If I came to him and was like, I would like to be with other men, he would just say he would want to remove himself from the equation. He's like, I just don't know that I know how to be present there, but I would want that for you. And again, he would want me to be able to communicate it. He's always like, just communicate it to me, because for him, it's all about my happiness, even if it means taking himself out of the equation for his own sanity and boundaries. The difference is because of all of these other pieces and all of the alignment, it's just not a need. And I am someone who it's always been a need. I have always had partners where we never were fully monogamous. This is really, or we were monogamous and it was work. This is not monogamous work to me.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes. No, 100%. I did want to say that before at least we close up, is that a threesome will never save your relationship ever. Don't ever go have a threesome to save your relationship. No, it can bring you closer if you're already safe, if you're already connected. It can bring you closer. It can add some fun, but don't do it for somebody else.
Don't do anything as a Band-Aid.
Please. Like, I'm talking about this and I'm talking about the benefits of it, but it took communication. It took like work. Like it will bring up jealousy. It does. It's how you handle it. It's how you communicate it. It's how much you trust them already. So if you already don't trust them, that's going to be hard. So just don't do that.
That is such a good way of wording it. I love that. If you already don't trust them, it's like, that's a lot of it. And I think people, they make the mistake that having threesomes and doing these things and all this exploration comes from a place of trying to give someone something at like last ditch effort. And it's like, no. This should come as a result of being in a place where you both agree, want this, trust each other, and have a foundation that you can build on this, because otherwise it doesn't work. I mean, the best relationships where I've seen where they have polyamory or openness or whatnot, the people who are in it, you're right, it's down to the, can I sit on your lap? And it's like, let me ask my wife. There's still a certain boundary, comfort, respect, and there's a little bit of a tiering, and a truly good third, or in a committed situation, knows their place and actually enjoys it, is comfortable with it, feels safe, like you mentioned, safe in that role of knowing that you're a part of something, but you're feeling something totally different and not taking someone else's place. And I think so many times threesomes can get very competitive for people too. And you need to know those boundaries. You need to have the discussion. And again, we keep coming back to it, but it's communication.
Yeah. Oh my God, this episode has been a fucking amazing, delicious, juicy awesomeness. So I can't wait to share it. Was there anything else you'd like to share? I'll definitely add your links in the bio. Go check us out on Instagram, and then I'll have your business links. Is there anywhere else you want them to go?
I will give links to the vibrators that I showed just because I think that they're great tools. And
Yes.
other than that, no, thank you for having me. I love talking to you. You and I know we're like the people who could talk all day because we just have such similar kind of stories and like desires. And I'm sure we have so many fun sexcapades that we would like love to talk about and share. So
Right.
maybe we'll dive into some of that stuff on our IGTV and do something like this again sometime.
Yes. Oh, I'm so excited. Okay, well, thank you so much.
Thank you.